Welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Awaken Heart podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters, and today marks the 100th episode of this podcast. So thank you for joining me. It's been a fabulous experience over the last couple of years. Talked to so many amazing guests, and for this 100th episode, I've got a really special episode for you, one that will most definitely touch your heart. Today, I'm honored to have Patti DiMiceli join me for a deeply moving and inspiring conversation. Patti is a life coach, an end-of-life doula, and a grief educator and coach who has spent over 4 decades working with those who are living, dying, and grieving. Her story is nothing short of extraordinary. Born in the City of Angels at Queen of Angels Hospital in Los Angeles, Patti always felt she was chosen for a unique purpose, even before she understood why. That purpose became clear in 1979 when she discovered a small lump behind her daughter Amber's ear, a moment that changed her life, her destiny, and ultimately the world. Patti's incredible journey through the loss of her daughter led her to challenge conventional views of death and grief. Her book, Embrace the Angel, invites us to harness the power of crossing the threshold to create meaning, enrich lives, and transform this world for the better. In this episode, Patti shares how she's used the gifts given to her by the divine to create Tobias & Company, LLC, an organization that supports their giving back division, Embrace the Angel. Through her unique creations and her work as a grief coach, she helps others navigate the complexities of loss with an open heart and a practical, uplifting perspective. This conversation explores the miracles Patti has experienced, the importance of connection, and how embracing love and compassion in the face of loss can lead to a profound healing. Join us for this heartfelt episode and discover the beauty and wisdom that can emerge even from life's most challenging moments. Let's dive in. Hi, Patti. Welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I really, this conversation really is touching my heart because as we were discussing just before we hit record, my father passed and I've got a mother that has Alzheimer's. And you offer very compassionate and you offer a lot of grief support. You're an end-of-life doula. You had your own miracle, though tragic, happen when you were 27 years old and your daughter passed at 4.5 years old. And she gave you a gift to help you through the grief that shows you that we just don't, when we pass on, we don't really pass on. We're still here. We just change form. And I want my audience to hear this story and maybe they can see it reflected in their own lives in a lot of the situations. Maybe they've lost a child at a very young age, an adult, a husband, or a loved one as they pass to the other side. So can you share Amber's story with us and how her passing has shaped your journey and mission in life?
Wow. Well, yeah, I can't believe I was chosen to receive a miracle on this earth. I still can't believe it. And it's been nearly 44 years. She died on my 27th birthday in 1980. And, very, very briefly, and you can get, Amber and I wrote Embrace the Angel. So I call it our book, but you can get a free ebook on embracetheangel.com. But very briefly, in August of 79, I discovered a small lump behind her ear. And my first thought was, oh my God, cancer. And I didn't even know kids got cancer at all. previous to that, I had a premonition when she was born that I would die before she was 6. And so I documented our life together so she would know me. When I discovered that lump, I thought cancer, I heard it's not you who will die, it's Amber. And that started me on this odyssey, if you will. I went all over the state of Connecticut. I went to 8 different doctors and begged them to biopsy it, and they refused. They said lots of kids get lots of lumps and bumps. And by this time, it was like the size of a golf ball.
Wow.
And so she fell, she hit it on the fireplace, and it doubled in size, like very quickly. And so I rushed her to the hospital. They operated the next day. They said it couldn't possibly be cancer, but it was. It was in the 3rd stage. So they took out the tumor, and they were saying chemotherapy, surgery, and radiation, that's all there is. And I'm like, there's got to be more. So I went to the New Haven Register, the newspaper, and I begged them to please, can I put a plea out there? This was before personal computers. I just wanted to ask the world, are there any cancer therapies anywhere in the world that can save Amber's life? And so the Associated Press picked up on it, went around the world, the wire service, and I started getting all these phone calls and telegrams, and I actually have all those records as well. And so I decided to take her to Freeport, Bahamas, Dr. Lawrence Furton, who was one of the founders of immunotherapy. He was at St. Vincent's in New York, and they said, you can't practice immunotherapy here. So they banished him to the Bahamas. So he set up a clinic in the Bahamas, Freeport, and we ended up having to sneak out of the country because I didn't want them to take Amber away from me because I wouldn't give her chemotherapy. So my second husband and I went to the Bahamas with Amber, and we were there. 2 weeks after we were there, Dr. Burton was on 60 Minutes, and that was on a Sunday night. On a Monday morning, I went to the clinic because you have to live in an apartment or a hotel. It's not a hospital. So I drove my little $10 bicycle to the clinic, and there were people from all over the world that had arrived for their last hope. And so I started, helping out the clinic, drawing blood, because the therapy, basically from good human blood, donated blood, they isolate 4 protein fractions that make your immune system. And then you bring the patient's blood into the clinic, and they measure those protein fractions, and then they give you little 1 cc syringes, and then you have to inject those every hour. So the therapy was drawing Amber's blood and then going back for those injections. They give them to you. So I drew her blood, and as part of the therapy, what Gary and I decided to do was have Amber draw Gary's blood. So here she is, 4 years old, and I actually have photographs of all this. It's in the book, and she's drawing Gary's blood. It was just an amazing thing. So we stayed there, and we tried to save her life, and the therapy worked. She got tonsillitis. Her body could not keep up. So we ended up having to find a surgeon that would help us here in the U.S., what they called debulk the tumor. And we couldn't because we were in the news and we were like a hot potato. So Dr. Bernie Siegel, he said, Patti, come home. I'll treat her as my own. And he assembled a team of surgeons to try to save her life, but he couldn't. So we ended up making the decision. I was in the hospital, and Amber was taking some tests. And I heard, turn around. I was, getting her something from the gift shop. And I heard, turn around. And I turned around, and I looked at this rack of big golden keys. I actually have one here. This is the key.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard, give this to Amber when she's dying so that she can open the golden gates to heaven.
Oh my God,
And so, yeah, well, you know what chills are?
Angels.
Chills are the other side, coming through our bodies. So we brought her home. She picked out the clothes she wanted to go to heaven in. She wasn't afraid to die. I work with children that are dying, and I haven't yet met a child that's afraid. It just came from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So she picked the clothes she wanted to die in. 5 minutes after midnight on my birthday, Gary and Amber sang happy birthday, and then she slipped into a coma. We brought her down the next morning, and I recorded everything and took photos, and I was telling her how much I loved her. Thank you so much for coming and showing me what love is. And even though she was laying back in a coma, tears started coming down. And I wiped them away. And then I'm like, Amber, it's okay. It's okay. And then a whole bunch of tears came down.
Mm.
And I realized that she wasn't afraid to die, but she was afraid to leave me behind.
Mhm.
And so when I said, I'll be okay, Amber, go now, be with God, Amber. As soon as I said those words, Nancy, she stopped breathing, and I physically felt her leave her body and pass through my own body.
Oh.
It was like vibrating goosebumps times a million.
Mm.
And all I could say was, thank you, God. Thank you, God. I was so grateful. So she died at 2:30 on October 30th. And Bernie, because we couldn't find anybody to pronounce her dead at home, Bernie said, I'll be in surgery, so I may not be able to be there. So he said, just take her body, drive to St. Raphael's Hospital, and I'll have somebody there waiting for you. So I did. Gary and I brought her and put her in the back of I had a little Volkswagen Squareback, put her body in the back of the car. She looked like she was sleeping.
Mm.
And I'm driving on I-95, and I remember looking in my rearview mirror and seeing her dead and looking at life just go by. No one knew,
Mhm.
Before I got to the hospital, I heard pull over and take a picture. People need to see dead. So I did. I just got my camera. I went out. I lifted up the trunk hood and took a picture and then got back in the car. When we got to St. Raphael's, we pulled up in the front entrance and they brought a stretcher out. I put her body on the stretcher. And as the doors opened, there were like maybe 100 people behind there watching because they had followed the story
Mhm.
in the media. And some of them were crying and comforting each other. We brought her into the emergency section, the emergency room, and she lay there. And I remember looking at that tumor that was now, so another metastasis had grown, so it was huge. It was almost as big as her head,
Wow.
outside and inside. So I was literally watching cancer eat my baby.
Mhm.
And I remember I took that tumor and I just shook it gently. And it was like jelly. It was sickening. And I had so much rage and hatred for cancer that I buried it for years. So the mortician came. We were going to get her cremated. So the mortician came, and I remember walking her into the bowels of the hospital, the dark hallways. I saw him standing at the end of the hallway with a stretcher with a black body bag, and I walked over to him. And then I left my body and literally watched the scene.
Mhm.
And I took her body, put it in the body bag, and kissed her lips. And then he zipped up the bag and left. And what I had imagined and what I wrote about in the journal that I kept throughout the journey was exactly the opposite. I thought, oh my God, if I lose Amber, I'll die. I will die. She was my world. I didn't have any family or anybody really. But it was a miracle. And the miracle was before Amber died, she said amazing things. So I have a whole suitcase of cassette tapes, all catalog of the teachings that she left us. But two things stand out. She said, Mom, I know I'm here to help a lot of people.
Mm.
And the second thing she said, Mom, when I die, I'll still be Amber. I'll just be different. And so what happened was at that very moment where she left her body, and I physically felt it, she changed. She never left me.
Energy.
And so the fact that for 44 years now, I'm living her legacy of helping a lot of people
Mhm.
and sharing that miracle of death does not delete. We simply change. And we're
Mhm.
always with our loved ones. it's more than just being in their heart. They're here.
Mm-hmm.
We can't see them with our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm incredibly blessed, you know, very, very, very blessed. I will always be grateful.
Well, that is just, oh my God, heartbreaking story, but one that she came into this life, her contract was over at 4.5 years old, and she chose you to carry on this work for people that have had loved ones cross over and to have the light of hope that they're not gone. They're never gone. It changes form. So she was an angel brought into your life. How did you resolve that? I mean, you were gifted with her presence pretty early on. And off the subject, have you ever heard of Laura Lynn Jackson at all? I know that she has the Forever Family Foundation, where she helps people that are grieving, children that have crossed over to the other side. She's an accredited psychic medium that has been gifted since she was an early age. Of course, and when you're gifted at an early age, you're like, I don't want this, I don't want this. But she's one that had to do all the tests for multiple tests in order to become this accredited Forever Family Foundation. I think that's what it's called. I read her book, The Light Between Us. You should read this book, The Light Between Us. It's freaking amazing. I listened to it on audiobook. And she had said that, they're always with us. There's always signs. And that if you pick up a piece of paper, here's a pick of paper, pick up a piece of paper. And this piece of paper, hold it up. This is how close they are. Like that thin. They're just on the other side, literally. That's how thin the veil is between us. So, yeah, I'll put that in the show notes too, Laura Lynn Jackson. So you were gifted really early on with the message of hope that she's not, she's still here with you. So how did you channel your experience of this pain into the powerful transformative work that you do today?
Well, if somebody told me that I was full of rage and anger at cancer and at the cancer industry, and I probably did, just say, no, I'm just full of love. But really, I was really angry.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I did these vigils around the White House. And one of them, I had created the sandwich sign. It was a full body length sign. On the front was a photograph of Amber. I'd just gotten her into modeling, so it was one of her modeling shots. Perfect, beautiful. And on the back, I had a picture of the tumor, like her cancer. And then underneath that, I had a picture of her dead in the back of my car. And it said, kills. And I created these pamphlets and I walked around the White House handing out these pamphlets. I mean, now that I look back on it, I think, my God, did you really do that? But I did. And it was one way I wanted to dissipate the great anguish and horror that I had seen and witnessed and been a part of. I wanted to dissolve it somehow by sharing it with the world. So, that was really my motivation. It got to the place, though, where I realized that I wasn't doing myself any good and I wasn't doing the world any good. People were like shocked. They were like running from me. I mean, it's so bad.
Mm.
So I realized that Amber doesn't want one. She doesn't want that. And she told me so. So I started, taking all my notes and audio and everything and started just typing Embrace the Angel. And I learned a lot from that. And so now I just realized that my purpose here on earth is to share Amber's message of hope, which we're all seeking, hope, heaven, and the miracle of life and death. Because death as miraculous as life.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started doing workshops and presentations and getting back out into the world, coming from a place of love and kindness and not, anger. And so I actually started a business, Tobias and Company, and I went around the world and I took photographs of doors and windows and door knockers and angels. And then I took those images in Photoshop and did the artwork and put them onto silk scarves and ties and pillows. And so it was fantastic. And so what I realized, I had all these angel photographs. So I took all these angel photographs and put them on a silk scarf and put inspirational quotes on either end so that a mother who was grieving could wear this scarf and feel elevated. And then I got this idea of
One of them.
collecting drawings of angels.
Here's the pillow.
There you go. There's Grace's angels. Yeah, so I started collecting drawings from children, put them onto silk satin pillows, and donating those to people, not just kids, but donating those to children that are dying and grieving.
Hmm.
And Grace, actually, who did our second pillow, Grace's Angels, I was collecting drawings for the first pillow and saw her in the park with some friends. And she said, "Oh, can I take some back to my school?" She was in fourth grade. And I said, "Sure." So I gave her a big stack. 2 weeks later, I get this 45-second audio tape from Kristen, Grace's mom, where Grace talks about angels. And it's on our website,
Yeah,
Embrace
I
the
see
Angels.
that.
Yeah. And it was so cool because, she says,
Oh,
we're never alone. The angels are always with us, very matter of factly. And at the very end, she said, "So I want to collect angels for some kids around the world." And it took her 4.5 years. And she collected
wow.
164 drawings. And in the meantime, her dad's in the State Department. So they were near Ukraine. And there was a lot of Ukrainian children, refugee children that were coming to the school there. And so she got their drawings. And when she got back to the US, I put the artwork together, sent it off to China. They made the pillows. And then last Christmas before actually, we assembled a package and sent it over to Europe to the Ukrainian children. And so in the middle of Grace's Angels, there's a beautiful blue and yellow angel. And so the Ukrainian children were able to actually see their drawings on these pillows. Anyway, so we're working on animal angels now. That's our next pillow. But yeah, I just love elevating others with, kindness and hope.
Yeah, and your tagline for the company is creating products with love that inspire and transform. It's beautiful. Yeah, you mentioned animals. I had my almost 20-year-old cat that she was the last one that passed on she passed in March. I have 2 new kittens. Oh my God. But yeah, the grieving was really hard. It was really hard. And a lot of people that's their children, and they've got those beautiful spirits. What have you discovered about animals and their spirits when they transform? Are they
Well,
still around us too?
yeah, oh, very, very much so.
Mm.
I work a lot with people whose pets have died. So I work a lot with pet loss. And, you know, people are complicated. And if it could only be more like animals, I think this world would be so much better because they love us. They don't care what you look like. They don't care how much money you have. They are unadulterated love. And when you experience that in your life with an animal and they die, like part of your heart is ripped out of your chest. It's so painful. But yeah, our animals are here. I had a little Jack Russell, Annie, who saved my life when I was in my last marriage. She's never left. Our animals don't leave either. Everything is energy. Every single thing. This world that we're in, this 3D world, there's many dimensions beyond this one.
What is a good practice for people to tune into their energy? To really, I know that I had an animal that passed, and when I was coming back from the vet's office, I went upstairs and I came back down later and all the windows were down. All the windows were down. The moonroof was open. I had to go to run an errand and my GPS was like spiraling all over the place. I think that's one that I really felt her energetics, but I know they do electronics. There's numbers, there's animal signs. So how can someone that is grieving really able to maybe sit and feel the presence of it? What is a practice that somebody can do to really be able to tune into that?
Well, I discovered an app. Believe it or not, I've got hundreds of apps on my phone, but this one, if I had to choose one, it would be this, my camera and this. It's called Insight Timer.
Oh, I have that.
Yeah, it's a free app. I pay $30, I think, a year for the plus. But
Mhm.
I listen to it in the morning. I listen to it in the evening. They have some of the greatest teachers in the world. There's
Mhm.
light events, there's meditations, there's sound baths. If you've never taken a sound bath,
Mhm.
it's amazing. So I think for myself, I can only speak for myself. What I do is I tune in, I use my body as a tool, channel, if you will. And you can actually do a search on Insight Timer like pet loss, and you can just put your AirPods or your headphones on, and you can just immerse yourself in another world, if you will. It helps me to ground, to understand, to learn more, to stay open and curious about death and dying and living, really. So I use Insight Timer quite a lot.
Mhm.
But I think nature also, being
Mm.
in nature, being in the woods, being out, looking up at the sky. I mean, yeah, when did we stop looking up? Because now
Mhm.
everybody's looking down at their heart,
Yes. Yes.
looking up at the sky and just realizing that you're looking into infinity
Mhm.
and wrap yourself around that. That's infinity right there. So I think being curious, childlike, if you will, being like a child. If we could be more like children again, I think the world would be a lot better.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that. You're tuning in, you're meditating, you're getting quiet, you're getting presence, you're open up to all that is. But how is that for someone that is in the initial grief, like the initial loss? It's so hard to quiet the mind. That's something that we can get to. I think over time you were gifted with, even though you were very angry with what happened, you were gifted from Amber speaking to you from the other side and giving you that comfort right away. A lot of people don't have that. They just see the physical part of their child dying or their parent or their pet. So someone that is in the very initial stages of someone passing, what advice would you give them? What can you offer them to help begin that healing process? To like feel it, emotion.
Yeah, I think you really hit it there, Nancy. It's feelings, don't numb, but feel.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, I got this message from Amber, and actually it was after I wrote the second edition of the book. And it was in the fall, and I had a skylight above my bed, and it had just rained. So I scanned the last photo, which was the huge tumor, and I just wept uncontrollably. I mean, I finally, after I don't know how many years, let it all come. It let the tears flow. I got in bed, I lay back, and I looked up at the skylight, and there was two leaves and then a happy face smile
Mm-hmm.
of leaves. And there was a one leaf off to the side. And I heard, Mom, it's okay to cry. Tears are liquid love.
Mm-hmm.
We, because we feel, and we feel because we care. So I would honestly say, and after I heard that, I have never, ever apologized for crying, ever,
Mm-hmm.
because it's liquid love. So I would say, cry. Cry as much as you possibly
Mm-hmm.
need to, or want to. Never be ashamed of crying. If you're in the market and you feel like crying, cry.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can almost guarantee you that someone who sees you crying will come over and comfort you. You will connect with another human
Mm-hmm.
being. I think crying and connection are vital, especially when you first have somebody die in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the moderators for David Kessler's Tender Hearts. And every Monday we do this specific loss group. So David wrote a book he worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, called Finding Meaning, the Sixth Stage of Grief. And Elizabeth was amazing. She actually read Embrace the Angel and did a review for us. I just love her so much. Anyway, so I moderate, and David's whole premise is to connect people around the world that are grieving. And, you know, we've got like 300 people from around the world coming to this one space. And it's a beautiful way for people to connect again, to, make you feel like you're not alone.
Mm.
And as long as we're here on earth, I'm an angel in a human cloak, as we all were born angels. Um, yeah, connecting with other human beings is so, so critical. So I would
Mhm.
say crying and connecting.
Because that energy, you don't want it stuck in your body. It can metastasize into something, a disease disorder. It'll come out later on at some form, but it's trapped in the body. You have to like let that energy out. It's okay. I grieve super hard with my Taz, like really grieved hard. And then that energy's released and you're able to, journal, write it out, and then it's still there, but it's released. It's not as intense. You're able to go more on with your life. But get that out and connect with other people and then start the work as far as meditation, connecting, with yourself and, feel the person, the energy still around you and know
Yeah.
that life goes on. Yeah. So another part of your story, you've turned this into so much good to help people that have crossed over and are an end of life doula and grief coaching. I would like to talk a little bit about this. What exactly is an end of life doula?
Well, the typical, definition basically is you stand with the family and the person, and I do pets as well, but you stand there with them and find ways to honor their life while they're living and work with that person. Use, different modalities, aromatherapy, some light massage, different textures. Like I use silk a lot because silk is very close to human skin. So music, I do some of the hand sculptures, the little sculpey hand, not sculpey, but the hand sculptures where you place people's hands in a bucket of like plaster. Find ways to honor their life and help them make that transition. Freely talk about death if they want to. And a lot of people that are dying do want to talk about dying and death.
Mhm.
But it's a difficult subject for those of us that are living, that we're not at the threshold. And, that's totally understandable. But listening is huge. Sometimes people just want to be heard,
Mm.
active listening, feeding back, doing some rituals that will help you once the body is no longer inhabited, if you will. I haven't washed one of the bodies yet, but I would if family wanted it.
Mhm.
Honoring their culture, because a lot of cultures they go through death very differently than the American culture.
Mhm.
Basically, you're there to advocate for the person who's dying. And, I don't do, I'm a volunteer with hospice, but I'm not hospice, so I don't
Mhm.
administer any medications or anything. And you partner with whoever that is in their life as they're making this transition. You partner with them to see how you can be of service. So being serving is something I love to do. So yeah, basically you're just at the threshold, doing your best, holding their hand, gentle, light touch if they want. Yeah, it's some people are like, how on earth can you do this? And I find myself saying, how can I not do this? Knowing what I know and what I've gone through and what I've experienced,
Mhm.
I just feel honored that anybody would want me there at their time of death.
So you come in the end of life, like, when if they come back on hospice and they know they're going to die and transition, you help the families that are grieving. I think it's such a beautiful thing because they're literally, the veil is thin. They're crossing on the other side, about to cross. I mean, my dad, it was an awful experience when I can't even go into his awful experience, but there were moments where, he was just like hallucinating. And I feel he was seeing his mom or, close to the other side. But so you're helping them. A lot of other cultures, they celebrate this time because you're moving on and it's a celebration as you move on to the other side. We just see a lot of pain with it. It's just, from my experience, there was so much pain. I didn't know what to expect. In preparing families, I think it's important what to expect. We had no idea, and then we had that allopathic care talking to us. we weren't prepared for what we would experience with them being home. We thought it was a beautiful process, like what you're talking about, the end of life doula. They're at home, they've got their family around them, they're saying their goodbyes. It was just like what the it was not a good experience. So I love what you do to help people, the transition from, life to death, even though we never really die. I think it's such a beautiful thing. So I had mentioned that my mom has Alzheimer's, so you're the end of life doula. How do you help someone that might not necessarily understand or not be all there mentally transitioning? Of course, you're helping the family, but how would you help someone that's transitioning as an end of life doula that might have dementia or memory loss?
Nancy, it's so interesting. When I worked in an assisted living facility for some time, people in memory care, you look into their eyes. Their eyes, like they say, the eyes are the windows to the soul.
Mhm,
Their eyes, if for the most part, sometimes they give you a blank stare. There's an entity
mhm,
inside that
mm,
person,
mhm,
never dies. And the body is, you know, failing that spirit, if you will. But it's a natural process. And looking into their eyes, and especially like holding their hand or touching them and looking into their eyes, they are speaking to you, not with words. It's a matter of calming yourself to the point where you're willing to, with your eyes and your heart. It's not easy. It's not,
mhm,
there's no real way to soften the blow, if you will.
mhm,
But sharing these last moments, these last times, those memories will never go away. And if you can make those memories beautiful, heartbreaking, yes, but beautiful in the way that you connected again, there you go.
There's a beautiful book I read, Creating Moments of Joy. Are you familiar with that? It's somebody that she
No,
was a caretaker and living, working at assisted living. And there's people that really cared about these patients, just about creating moments of joy, like the different stages of dementia, but creating moments of joy and being able to relate to them from their perspective. Like maybe your parent doesn't know how to take a shower because they didn't take showers back in the day. They wanted to bathe, having language, like how they'll like listen more to somebody that looks like they have authority by putting like a, doctor's coat on or something like that. But it's an absolutely beautiful book to to help people are dealing with someone that does have a loved one that is going through those stages of their life. But that really touches home and really makes a lot of sense because you the mind, but you're dealing with the spirit. You're dealing with the soul. That's what we used to tell our dad because he was really heartbroken that my mom didn't really recognize him. And we're like, Mom, Dad, Mom is still there. She's still Mom. It was hard for him not to take so many things so personally, but Mom's still there. So
well,
how
same
do these,
here.
I
Really,
thank you. Thank you. And then what I'm dealing it'll all be okay, but we learned a lot from that, and when it comes time for my mom, definitely talking to somebody like you and learning a lot, and she's definitely not going to that assisted living, and just want her experience to be 1,000 times different than what we saw our dad go through, who didn't deserve to go through that at the end of his life. My parents were all adopted. We're all blessed to have such amazing parents that we have, my 2 siblings and I. So all these everything that you've experienced with people dying and what you've experienced in your own personal life and your advocate, your work as an advocate, how do these experiences influence your perspective on life, love, and healing?
well, yeah, I definitely value life. If I were to tell you that, and this is my own personal experience, Amber's life and death was incredibly meaningful and powerful. Living with a narcissist, and the last husband was a malignant narcissist,
Mm,
that nearly killed me. And it was more devastating for me personally, my own personal experience. It was more devastating than Amber's death because it was uncalled for and unneeded. And there was no purpose to it. It was just choosing to be evil, really. And, that's what I'm really advocating. I mean, I work a lot with people that are living and dying, but I also am educating people. It took me 63 years to figure out that I was living with a narcissist. 63 years.
63 years. My
My
God.
father, and then a lifetime of narcissism and narcissist.
Wow.
And then the last one, he treated me so badly that I read a book by Lundy Bancroft called Why Does He Do That? In September of 2017. And when I read that book, I listened to audiobooks. My eyeballs like popped out of my head. And all of these puzzle pieces, it was like a psychedelic trip. All these puzzle pieces came in to form this puzzle. And I finally saw what was happening. I had to take 4 months to plan my escape. During those 4 months, I studied, I learned, I got my ducks in a row. And one of the things that saved my life there was a gray rock. So in the world of narcissism, there's a term called gray rock. And basically what narcissists do, one of their patterns of behavior, because they do have a playbook, by the way. So, one of their patterns of behavior is they want to poke you and prod you and push you and push your buttons and all the other stuff. And they want to see a reaction, sort of like a cat playing with a mouse. That's their sense of control and power. And when you stop doing that, like the mouse dies, they go on to another mouse, what they call so you become literally like a gray rock. So what I did was, and fairly recently, I said, because I'm a graphic designer, and so I could design something that could teach people. So I actually have a flyer here. We just got it this week. So I put together a gray rock, little symbolism here. So what we're doing now is we're just about to launch this thing, and we're about to go live and sell these gray rocks to help people live and help them understand. So here's my story. So this goes with it. And inside, this is a graphic I made.
Wow.
Red flags of a narcissist and highly sensitive people. That's what I am. That's what you are. And then we have a love and learn collection. So we have backpacks, water bottles, tote bags, and puzzles that have this really neat graphic to teach people, to save them from, gosh, I went through so much, to save them from having to go through it.
Yes, or to get out. So you're just about to launch it. I just had an interview last week about she had a covert narcissist. I think that's what he was. I want to include that at least in those show notes. I mean, we could have a whole other interview about narcissism. Like maybe I'll have you on again sometime because I think a lot of women, I think everybody has had some form of narcissist in their life at some point of their life. Some of them are really to the degree that you have, and they're just trapped and gaslit and hopeless, and they have kids, and the abuse is intensifying. So you're about to launch that. When do you? Well, let's go into where we're about to wrap this up. But I'd love to segue into how can people find and work with you? How can people find some of your book? I know you mentioned that it's a free download. I know you've got Angels in Action. A lot of things that you're doing. I'd love to hear about this, the Gray Rock too. I will include that in the show notes. I'm going to include that in another episode I have on narcissism, and what your website is, and anywhere that they can find you, and maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Patti DiMiceli, PattiDiMiceli.com is where I do all my coaching and that sort of work. And then we have Bias and Company, which is my commerce. That's where I sell the different products, the red flags and all of those doors of Tuscany and that kind of thing. We have a Naval Academy collection. So, and then we have a giving back division. That's what we call it, of Tobias and Company, because all the money from Tobias and Company supports Embrace the Angel. So it's really it's a beautiful way to enjoy creating art and creating silk products and things, and to take that money and support my angel work, my
Mm-hmm.
Embrace the Angel. Embrace the Angel, it's a really beautiful precept because, yeah, I didn't really think of the title. It kind of was bestowed upon me, but it's sort of a call to action. Like, if I can embrace my angel, I'm hoping that others can learn to
Mm-hmm.
embrace theirs. So one of the cool things is I go through life, and like if I'm in the market and I feel led, I'll strike up a conversation, I'll talk to somebody, and I'm like, oh, wait, I have something for you. And then I have this cool little blue pouch, and I say, I'm a pebble thrower in the still pond of life. And these are my pebbles. So
Mm.
then you can see that there's
Yes.
little Embrace the Angel cards and
Yes.
these little pewter coins.
Mm-hmm.
And they peel off your pebble and let's see what your special word is. And there's like 5 different words. And they do. I'm telling you, Nancy, I've been doing this for maybe 14 years or so. These little cards, these tiny little pebbles with guardian angels have changed lives right
Mm.
before me. I mean, people like their father just died or their daughter, or some people have literally fallen on the ground weeping.
My God.
And it's such a beautiful way for me to just go through life,
Yes.
not selling anything, but just touching lives with these little
Mm-hmm.
tiny pebbles. So
Mm.
I love being a pebble thrower.
Oh, that's beautiful, especially now in our technology age and everyone's on the phone, everyone's disconnected. A lot of people are disconnected from something outside of themselves, and that really puts them in touch with the divine. And it's like literally like synchronicity, whatever they're going through in the moment. And this little beautiful pebble of hope that you're giving them is such a gift to so many people. And it's going to really change people's lives on a day to day and what you're doing to change lives. I mean, I would just crumble too if someone passed something along because we're all going through something. Like if I saw you on the street, you gave me that, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that would just
Well, the
really.
cool thing, choose one for yourself
Mhm.
and one for someone you love.
Mhm.
They do. And the cool thing ever is it's like throwing a pebble in the still pond of life, right? You see
Mhm.
these ripples.
The ripple.
So then they become pebble throwers.
Mhm.
So we actually sell these bags, these little 10 per bag on embracetheangel.com. And we get orders and people
Mm.
become pebble throwers in their own life. So it's really
Mm.
neat.
I want to be a pebble thrower. I think that's beautiful. It's domino. It's the domino effect, and it's like paying it forward. Somebody pays the bill for somebody that's getting a coffee behind them. It just inspires people to really connect and yeah, it's such a beautiful thing. I love it. I love everything you're doing. Just a few more questions, like 1 or 2 more questions because we gotta wrap up here. What advice would you give to someone struggling to transform their pain into something that is transformative?
I would say, again, become like a child. What brings you joy? What is it that ignites that spark inside you? Because as long as you're living and breathing, there's a spark there. For me, it's passing out pebbles or, putting a beautiful silk pillow into the arms of a child who's dying. It's that finding meaning, like David says, finding meaning, finding something in your life. For me, it's working with others, or pets. I think it's finding something that gives you a purpose that makes you feel as though you're not just sleepwalking through life. You're literally taking one tiny, tiny step at a time.
Mhm.
Just one and then another. It's not grand gestures, really. It's tiny little pebbles of action.
Mhm. Mhm. And they're transporting that into something powerful and positive. That's what I can do with that. Well, it's been wonderful having you on this podcast. I thank you so much for sharing your story and helping to inspire others and helping in such a really profound place in people's lives. I do have one more question that I ask all my guests, and what does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
Ooh. Gosh, for me, it means straddling, feeling, like literally feeling as though I'm straddling this physical world and the world that we don't see with our eyes. We see it with our heart once it's awakened. And for my heart, I was born this way. I was born with an awakened heart. People tried to kill it. People tried to destroy it. But, reclaiming that, knowing that and reclaiming that and living from this place as much as I can instead of this place,
Mhm.
I try my best to live from my heart.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Patti, for being on the Awaken Heart podcast.
Thank you so much, Nancy. You are doing so many great things in the world, and you're a pebble thrower for sure.
Thank you. I'm going to pick some up, and that's a great way to connect with other people. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awaken Heart podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenheartpodcast.com.